An Axon research project examining the effects of a cross-curricular approach. After reflecting on my background as an early childhood educator, my teaching practices during the teacher education program, and my personal teaching philosophy, three core values emerged: equality for all learners, implementation of a teaching approach that supports student learning needs, and teaching the students the importance of the history of the Indigenous people within our communities, province, and country. From these, an underlying theme emerged, which was inclusion. I value the importance of meeting the needs of the learners within my classroom and utilizing a teaching approach that accompanies this value, dependent on the needs of the learners. Other values that emerged were student learning needs, student engagement, and student achievement. Through my experience in my teaching placements, I have observed the need for a different teaching approach to support student engagement and inclusivity. During the teacher education program, I had the opportunity to observe and teach in 3 separate schools, in a grade 3 class, a grade 5 class, and a kindergarten class. In each of these placements, there was a disconnect in the ideal or value of inclusive practice and the actual practice being implemented. I was often left wondering how this happens and worrying for the students who weren't engaged and left to do other tasks. It is my opinion that for most students, our current education system proves to cater to or target a small percentage of learners. The students that are most successful strive in this type of learning environment commonly presented to them. The students who struggle to fit into this norm are frustrated, the teachers are frustrated, and the educational assistants are frustrated. A great amount of time, energy, resources, and providing extra support are spent on trying to adapt these students into a learning environment or setting that simply doesn't cater to their needs. When looking at this problem through the lens of inclusive practice, it is seen that the students who are struggling are often singled out, left to do another task separate from the rest of their classmates, or removed from the classroom altogether. It has also been observed that the classroom setting is designed to be teacher-directed with a set structure to each day that doesn't allow for much freedom. Therefore, those students with learning needs that require more freedom or flexibility are not met but encouraged to follow the set routine, heightening the frustration levels for the students, the teachers, and the support staff. This has an impact on student engagement, affecting student achievement levels, as well as the level of inclusive practice. I began to question how I, as an educator, can ensure I'm meeting the needs of the learners, engaging them, improving their achievement levels, and being an inclusive practitioner. What could I do differently? As I began to reflect on these experiences, the students and the teachers I had encountered, and my own core values in teaching pedagogy, I wondered if a different teaching approach could better support the learning needs of my students. The question that emerged became, what are the effects of a cross-curricular approach on student engagement within my classroom, and will this approach improve student achievement and enhance inclusivity within my classroom? This seems to be a loaded action research question. However, I view the concepts of student engagement, student achievement, and inclusive practice as interconnected. I believe that student engagement has a natural impact on their achievement levels, as well as the concept of inclusion in the classroom. When students are engaged, they are invested in their learning and most likely will improve their knowledge and understanding. Adjusting my teaching approach to better meet the learning needs of my students is an example of inclusive practice in and of itself. The cross-curricular approach promotes a holistic learning environment, building community, thus supporting inclusive practice. For the purposes of this research, there were some terms that needed to be defined. The first is the cross-curricular approach, which refers to an approach to planning and teaching that attempts to bring together within the same unit of work or topic aspects from different subject areas which are taught concurrently and which contribute in a meaningful and appropriate way to the unit's whole. The aim of a cross-curricular approach is to render it possible to make the subjects more coherent and interconnected. The second is equality. For this research, equality refers to ensuring all students have equal opportunity to succeed in the general education classroom. Therefore, it is the responsibility of educational institutions to be designed to enact the equal entitlement of every child to education while acknowledging and respecting individual differences. The third is inclusive practice. This is the ways in which pedagogy, curricula, and assessment are designed and delivered to engage students in learning that is meaningful, relevant, and accessible to all. It embraces a view of the individual and individual difference as the source of diversity that can enrich the lives and learnings of others. The fourth is student engagement. How involved or invested a student appears to be in their work and how connected they are to their classes, subjects, school environment, and their peers. Lastly is student achievement. For the purposes of this research, there are many ways to define student engagement. As Haiti and Anderman suggest, student achievement is widely defined and dependent on the individual learner and the goals of the learning environment. For the purposes of this action research study, student achievement will refer to the student's individual growth regarding the knowledge and understanding of the concepts being taught. Individual student achievement may also refer to social development within the learning environment. Although my underlying core value is inclusion, I'm narrowing in on researching a teaching approach that will support inclusion, student engagement, and student achievement. Therefore, I'm researching the impact of a cross-curricular approach in my classroom. As I began to look at the research around the impact of cross-curricular approaches, it became apparent to me that researchers have been focusing on the impact of a cross-curricular approach on student engagement opposed to its impact on inclusive practice. This, however, still aligned with my research as I believe student engagement to be part of being an inclusive practitioner. For their literature review, 4 main results emerged. First, I chose to examine policymakers' view of inclusive practice to support my idea of a disconnect between theory and practice. Gelida, Litch, and Vogel found that although there are national policies that promote mainstreaming and inclusion, there is evidence of uncertainty and confusion between policymakers and educators about what inclusion is and how this should be carried out. Secondly, I looked at pre-service teachers' perceptions of a cross-curricular approach, which revealed that the use of a cross-curricular approach proved to support student learning through increased student engagement, interactive learning, and direct correlation to real-life context. Thirdly, I examined a study comparing pre-service teachers' experience with a cross-curricular approach to their beliefs and the theory they had learned in the teacher education program. These teachers reported that the key advantages of a cross-curricular approach included increased student engagement, an increase in interest and motivation, as well as improved student behavior. Furthermore, increasing student motivation through a cross-curricular approach was particularly important for students with special education needs, who often find it difficult to engage with the subjects. Fourthly, I examined a study involving teachers' experience of implementing a cross-curricular approach in Northern Ireland. They have successfully integrated all the primary grades into this approach and finding this to be a great success as students were excited, involved, and their interest levels in the subjects was on the rise. These teachers also reported a lowered risk of overemphasis of context while simultaneously facilitating the development of transferable skills for their students. Limitations, gaps, and future research. Of the research examined, it is important to note these are small-scale studies which relied heavily on teacher and stakeholder views and opinions through qualitative data collection, which involves surveys, questionnaires, and interviews. Student achievement was not documented or collected, but simply relied on the report from the teachers stating there was an increase. Student feedback on the impact of a cross-curricular approach of their learning experience was also not considered. Further research may include examining the long-term impact of the cross-curricular approach on student knowledge and understanding, as well as attaining student feedback to their educational experience through this instructional approach. The participants, setting, and data sources. Participants in this study will include the students, the teachers, and the educational assistants within the classroom. All the research and collection of data will be taken within the classroom environment. When conducting action research, it is important to use data collection sources that can easily be integrated into your everyday practice to ensure you're not taking away from your teaching. For this reason, the three sources of data collection I have chosen are anecdotal observations, checklists, and interviews. These three sources are qualitative, and I feel they are most important for answering my research questions as well as ensuring validity and reliability of the data. The anecdotal observations conducted at the beginning, middle, and end of the school year create an opportunity to compare student engagement at these 3 points in the year. The checklists provide a quick glance as to the effect the cross-curricular approach may be having on student engagement on a weekly basis. Lastly, the interviews provide an opportunity for support staff to express their observations of student engagement, suggest changes or improvements, and provide any additional perspectives to the approach. I believe these three sources of data in their nature and strategically placed throughout the school year will work to provide data that will indicate the impact of a cross-curricular approach can have on student engagement, achievement, and inclusive practice. Reliability and validity. For this research, frequent tracking of student behavior and engagement in activities will be observed through checklists on a weekly basis. Frequent anecdotal note-taking by the teacher and educational assistant will be conducted. Regular interviews to communicate with support staff about what is happening in the classroom, things that I may not always be able to see or observe, will be used as well to ensure validity in the impact the teaching approach is having on the learning environment. This triangulation of data shows how these three sources will be used. The data collection, the timeline. This research will be conducted over a 10-month period or 1 school year. The anecdotal observations will be heavily utilized during the first 3 weeks and when the approach is first introduced. Then again, halfway through the year and again at the end of the year. Checklists will be ongoing and utilized at least once a week to keep an ongoing record at a glance of student engagement with the content. Interviews or meetings will be used once a month involving the teacher and educational assistant to gather feedback on student behavior, engagement, and overall achievement in the classroom while utilizing this approach. This is also a time to reflect on what is working and what's not working well, and anything that I may not have seen or need another perspective on. This will continue for the duration of the school year for a total of at least 10 meetings or interviews. The ethical considerations. When working with students and using their work, achievements, or observing their behavior, it is important to consider the ethical issues that may occur. For the purposes of this research, student names will not be used. All documentation will be kept in a Google document accessed only by myself to ensure the data remains confidential. The data within this document will also be written by myself so that there is one perspective. The checklist will be kept for teacher and support staff record only. Codes will be given for student names, and letters will be used to indicate what is being tracked. For example, a T for on track, P for participating, E for engaging. This will help to protect the privacy of the students within my classroom. In closing, it is my hope that through my research of implementing a cross-curricular approach, I will be better able to support student engagement within my classroom. From this research, I am also hoping to see an increase in student achievement and that this teaching approach will support best practice for inclusivity within my classroom. Thank you.